What's up? What's up? It's Zacky's son here again for you guys. Gonna talk more in detail about the Blackbeard deck list and the techs that you can choose. That people are, testing out and trying, and some people are seeing success with. And I'll talk about what I'm actually deciding to test right now, leading up to One Piece Day in March in Dallas, Texas. So this was the list that, if you saw my first video, this was the list that I brought to Orlando Nationals, and I got 55th. Went X and 3, lost the last round to Pluvi top decking for Nusuke. I'm still salty about it. I don't think I'll get over it until until I perform in One Piece Day. But moving forward, this was the list. And again, I spoke about how I chose this list because I'm a huge fan of consistency. I went back and forth with, trying Manchuri, Ice Age, Tempest Kick. And pretty much it was just those, with Manchuri, I tried Bardo, I tried Vivi. I tried some of those, popular techs as I was learning the deck, and I kept kind of going back and forth between those techs and then the pure Blackbeard list and trying other techs. And um, every time I went back to the pure Blackbeard list, I just felt like it feels too much of a well-oiled machine. Like it just feels so satisfying and buttery smooth to never whiff a search and to always find a tool, the piece to the puzzle that you're looking for. Um, so that's pretty much the rationale behind this list. I don't want to spend too much time on it. However, if you guys have any specific questions, please, please, please don't feel shy to comment or to, hit me up, DM me on Twitter. My handle is Sunzacky, Sunzakky. I'll put it in the description below. Sorry, I'm new to this. I didn't have to spell that out. But moving forward, right, the core for Blackbeard, in my opinion, is really just this, right? You want to have the four she guns because the trigger is strong, right? The trigger is great, and also, it kind of has priority over black hole because it fuels your trash for Jesus. Stronger, best Blackbeard 2K. Shiryu's kind of mid. Uh, doesn't really see any play unless you're down bad in the mirror matchup to just cycle your hand and try to find Jesus Black Hole or 10 cost. Stage, I know some people don't play stage. I think it's a huge mistake. With that said, you don't need to play four, but I think three is probably the lowest I'll ever agree to play it at. Black hole, you don't necessarily need to run four like I do. I think you can get away with running four she guns and two black holes. And same with This Is My Age. It's a great card, but you don't necessarily need it to be at four. With this, you have space for 10 cards in your deck. You probably want to add some type of 2K, whether it's Shiryu, whether it's Bartolomeo, if you're playing Manchuri, or take your pick. But four is definitely not enough. Four 2Ks is not enough. I don't think I need to explain Laboon, or Van Auger, or Jesus, or Dot Q, or Ten Cost Teach, or Lafitte. Those are all staples at the moment. I really hope I don't have to explain why there. Now, this is what most people will agree is the core. Leave space for 10 cards. However, you do want to consider that you don't want to just throw in 10 cards that aren't a part of the Blackbeard engine, because right now we're already running 8 cards outside of the engine. So if you were to throw in 10 non-Blackbeard cards, well, now we're talking about 18 cards. That's about a third of our deck, if not more. So our chances of whiffing are drastically higher in that situation with the search, and doesn't shouldn't have to, it should go without saying that whiffing a search in this deck is very, very detrimental, since we're already pitching a card a lot of the time for our leader ability. So our resources are very, very expensive to us. So you don't want to play 18 non-Blackbeard cards. Let's start with saying that. My opinion of what the core should really look like is this. Um, Really, sure, you can be any other 2K if you really, really want it to be another 2K. Um, it doesn't need to be Vasco shot, but a chump blocker is, I think, very useful. When I started playing Blackbeard, I did not give chump blockers enough value, but it does give you a lot of wiggle room, whether it's to stall a little bit, to save a card in hand, or to protect Jesus that I'm swinging with early. That let's say he's at 7K. Like that's something that's easily swing. Something your opponent can swing into, and basically buy. If they swing 9, I'm not really excited to drop 2 cards to protect that Jesus, but I also don't want it to die, and I also don't want to have to keep him standing. So, playing a Jesus and then next turn swinging with the Jesus and playing a chump blocker feels great. 4 stage, 3 liberation or black hole. I really like this card. I feel like there's a lot of matchups right now where you really, really need to get rid of the first body that your opponent plays out, right? Dofi, his first 4 costs, you need to get rid of that, otherwise he snowballs. Purple Luffy, his first 4 cost, 5 cost, you really need to get rid of that, otherwise he snowballs. Shanks, I think Shanks is favorable matchup for Blackbeard. Others might not agree, but I personally think that it is. If I see a Shanks across the table from me, I'm not pressed. I'm borderline relieved. But if he plays a Lucky Roo on curve, I want that thing gone most of the time because it will turn into a Lucky Roo, a 5 cost body next turn, and then a dragon, and then we start having fun with the 10 cost Shanks. So getting rid of that first 5K body against Shanks, if he does play one on 4, is very, very helpful. So that's why I think 3 is the right number. Also, it's a really great card to push for lethal at the end of the game if they have like a 5, if they have a 5 cost blocker, or if they have any blocker of any kind, the liberation or black hole is searchable. So I have lethal on board, but for one of their blockers, I can tap stage, hopefully find a black hole, and now I can actually attempt lethal. Also very important in the mirror to get rid of their their Jesus, or to nullify their teach when you're trying to go for lethal. That's why I think 3 is necessary, because sometimes early in game, if you don't need it, you'll pitch it, and then later on you'll use this is my age, and you'll need to grab a Jesus, and then you'll have to send the second one to the trash, and now you only have 1 left in deck that you have to rely on or hopefully not need. So that's why I think 2 is too little. I think 3 is the minimum that I would go. Now moving on to so this is what I think is the actual core. This is the minimalist core. If you really want to get crazy with tech choices, this is what I think is the more solid and stable core. Leaves you with 4 cards that you can decide to tech in. Now, techs. Options for techs, right? This is basically all the options that you have for techs. I think that some people have also tried one-legged toy soldier, so I'll include that here. Let's start off with the elephant in the room, and I guess I almost mean that literally. I don't think this card is good. I want it to be good. I really, really wanted to have this card in my deck. I love the alt art. The card's boss. You know what I mean? Like it's a sick card, but 7 Don is very expensive in Blackbeard. To play 7 Don, to play Jack for 7 Don, and not and not have a cost reducer on the field, you're basically paying 7 Don to do nothing. And then so if you need to, if the requirement is to have a cost reducer on the field the turn before, then you're going to play the cost reducer and you're not going to actually use it with the dot Q to KO a body. And then it's just too many conditions that need to line up for this to actually be a value play. And even then, I don't think it's worthwhile, because on 7 Don, you're typically looking to establish a Jesus, or you're looking to, get rid of a body, another way, or, search through your deck to make sure you're setting up optimally to be able to play 10 cost teach safely. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and X Jack out. I don't think it's a good card in this deck. I think it's a bait card in this deck. There are people who might disagree with me, and honestly, it's okay. These are all cards that have seen success in the Blackbeard list. I just don't think that it's really worth your while to play Blackbeard at its highest capabilities. Moving on, we'll go with Vivi. Let's go to Vivi. Vivi is a fun card, great card. You're really starting to turn. When you get this card off trigger, you start to feel like you're Katakuri or no. It feels great to just get a +1 off life right then and there. The problem is that if you're not getting it off life, you're really never feeling great to play it for 3 Don, especially since it only has 1k attack power. It's it feels bad to have to play this for 3 Don. Yeah, if you're playing Manchuri, you can, grab it out of your trash and play it when you're in a desperate situation. But I typically don't like to play for those bad positions, right? Because if I'm building my deck to kind of be able to, and thinking that I'm going to be in those sticky positions often, then either I'm not playing my deck well enough, or this deck's just not actually that good. Which I don't agree with. I think this deck is great. If you know how to play it and you play it optimally, I don't think you need this card. But if you think it's fun, you get a kick out of it, go for it at locals. I would not bring this to a big tournament though. I don't think it's really, what's the word? I don't think it really goes in line with the goal of this deck. And you know what I mean, and how you want it to play. It doesn't really advance your game plan. It kind of just, it's a cheeky staller, and that's all it really is. So I'm gonna X that out. Let's move on to let's go to the 2 cost events. I hate these cards. All right, I hate these cards, guys. Yeah, Shockwave has a boss ass trigger. I'll admit that. Dragon Claw KOs a 4 if you have 15 or more cards in trash. Sure. We all know that these cards are really just mostly for the Dofi matchup. How do I put this? If I'm gonna play 2 to 4 copies of this card in my deck, if we're gonna go with the notion that Dofi is a 70-30 matchup for, in favor of Dofi into Blackbeard, do we really want to sit here and argue that adding this card makes that significantly better for Blackbeard? Like, does it actually make that 70-30 a 46, a 60-40? I'm going to honestly argue not, especially since it's not searchable, that you have to hope that you draw into it, and then you need to be able to afford to keep 2 Don up for it. Now, the trigger's nice, sure, it's just a free KO, but it's not my play style. Honestly, in most matchups, yeah, okay, in other matchups, you'll just ditch it for your leader ability, sure, but I'll be really hard pressed to see 2 of these in a search and whiff a search. I'll be. I tried it, guys, and it honestly most of the time just feels bad. I get that maybe since I'm I don't want to like it, that maybe I'm being biased, but realistically, you don't need it to beat Dofi. You can beat Dofi, guys. I said it in my other video, my first video, and I'll say it again here. I don't believe that the moment you sit down across the table from a Dofi that you're automatically in a losing game. I think when both people draw the first 5 cards, it's a 50-50 from right there. Right? Now, if the Dofi on turn 1 plays Perona, yes, it sways more in Dofi's favor. So now let's say it's 40, right? Let's throw random numbers out. And then on his turn 3, he plays 2 cost teach, and now it's like a 70-30, right? Sure. Or not even. Like, even then I think it's drastic, because I've won games where they saw Perona and 2 cost teach. And, but then again, I've lost games where all they saw was Gravblade. You know what I mean? Like, it really just depends heavily on whether the Dofi sees Perona, 2 cost teach, Gravblade, and whether they are able to hit their leader abilities consistently. Which honestly, like, yeah, you can argue that it's not a lot to ask for, but then also you can argue that it is a lot to ask for. There's plenty of games against Dofi that I've been able to win just because, RNG wasn't in their favor. But like, it also depends on the Blackbeard to see multiple .Qs and multiple Van Augers and, have a Jesus stick and be able to play a 10 cost without it, being detrimental to their safely being able to establish a 10 cost, so it's, I feel like, or whether or not I get a Shigon off life, like, there's a lot of variables on both sides that can teeter back and forth. Now, mind you, I will say this. I think that if the Blackbeard sees everything that he needs to see and the Dofi doesn't see what he needs to see, I think that the most the matchup can be is a 50-50. I don't think in any world in OP09 can a Blackbeard be favorable into Dofi, but I think that if everything goes well, the Blackbeard can maintain a 50-50 standpoint across the table from a Dofi. Of course, like I said, if they see the Perona, they see the 2 cost teach, they see the Gravblade, then all of those, if they don't, if they blind hit a leader ability, all of those will sway that 50-50 more in favor to Dofi. I concede that. But I don't think that's a type of matchup where, like, off the rip, losing matchup. Don't think like that. That's a losing mentality. That's not how you're going to get better. That's not how you're going to win. That's not how you're going to, compete in this scene. So with that said, I don't think hyper indexing into Dofi is worthwhile. At least not with these cards. F that. Draw, swing 7. Swing 7. Forget leaving 2 Don up to be defensive. That's not my playstyle. It might be other people's playstyle. Kudos to you guys. But for me, my playstyle is if I have 2 Don that I have nothing to do with, I'm for sure swinging 7. And that's that. Now, since we're on the Dofi topic, let's go into Brook. I wanted to like Brook. To have 2 plus 2 pseudo .Qs, I think can be really strong. I really wanted to like this card, but the fact of the reality is that if you don't see this card going first on your second turn, your 3 Don turn, if you don't play this on curve, then it will be too slow for the rest of the game. So you need to basically see this card within your first 6 cards. And play it on that 3 Don turn for it to actually even be worthwhile. And even in that situation, if you have .Q is better. And I say .Q is better because at least when it gets KO'd, it'll draw you a card. This card, you play it on 3, doesn't do anything. On Dofi's 4 Don turn, he plays a 4. A 4 cost, and then on my 5 Don turn, I play Van Auger, and then I swing with Brook, do no damage because he's got 4, unless I play Laboon, but I don't want to play Laboon against Dofi because when they KO the Laboon, I don't get a +1, right? I want to play the Auger, and then I swing with the Brook to KO their 4 cost, right? And then on their 6 Don turn, they're going to, assuming they have a 1 cost played out from their first turn, right? They're going to leader ability, swing. They're going to swing 5. They're going to put 3 Don on their 1 cost, swing 5 at Brook. I'm not going to counter out of that because I know what they're going to do is they're going to go 2 Don on leader ability, swing 7 at that Brook, right? I'm not going to give him a card out of my hand to protect a Brook that's already going to die. So And if I do protect it, then they just, they can either swing at the Brook or they can swing at the Van Augur, and it'll be the same thing because I'm not giving him 2 cards out of my hand that turn, right? So basically, the Brook is gonna die just like the dot Q is gonna die. There's nothing else he could do with that 6 Don that would be more valuable except for maybe playing 2 cost each, and then sure, but in reality, the dot Q is more valuable, and this Brook is the fact that it so easily misses its timing. It just makes it not worth it in my opinion. And even if you see it on time, you'd rather it be a dot Q. If you don't have dot Q, then cool, that this is your out. But it's too dead in every other situation. So in my opinion, this card's out. I forgot about this card. Don't be this person. Okay, you're never going to use the main effect ever, right? So you're really just playing this for the draw 2 trigger. And I mean, are you going to play this card at 4 for real? Are you really going to play this card at 4? I mean, sure, I've seen people play this card and I've seen them win because they hit this trigger and it turned a losing game into a winning game right then and there. I still don't think that playing for that out is what separates a good player, separates a bad player from a good player. I think that, this card is too cheeky. I think it's too, RNG like dependent that, it's not worth space in your list. You're sacrificing consistency for a potential trigger that might or might not change the tides of a game. You know what I mean? So I'm never, ever going to even bother testing this card. One-legged toy soldier, it's just an extra minus. I don't think it's worth it. I didn't test it. I'll be honest with you guys, but it's not needed. I'm good into every matchup except for Dofi. Fine, this could help in Dofi because it's a -3, sure, but so can Tempest Kick, and Tempest Kick draws me a card and has a good trigger that KOs 2 cost each, or a pesky 1 cost that I don't want to have swing at me. Like it's Tempest Kick does the same thing, and it costs less and it replaces itself in his hand. So with that, I'm gonna say no to one-legged toy soldier. Bartolomeo is only good if you're playing Mancherry. But even if you're playing Mancherry, I don't think that this card is super impactful. Although I think it's one of the better options if you really want to play a blocker that's not Vasco shot and you want to have more 2Ks. I get it. No shade there. It's just not. I don't really like the tap Mancherry, return 2 to my trash, grab Bartolomeo, play Bartolomeo, play. It happens to save you once in a blue moon, but again, I'm really not trying to play for that situation, right? I play this deck in a way where I'm setting up my optimal situations, and my deck is so consistent that it's more likely than not that I get those optimal situations, optimal play lines. Bartolomeo is just a point of inconsistency and a 2K that we don't actually need, and is a 3 cost blocker that I don't actually want to spend three Don to actually develop. So for that reason, in my opinion, he's out for me. Ice Age, I liked this card for a while. I tested this card for like 3 weeks before Nats, and I never wanted to really take it out, but I just found myself, the more optimal you play, the less you need to depend on this card. But I guess you don't really ever depend on this card, but when you have it in hand, you can play a little more greedy, right? Like, for example, against Shanks, I like to go first because I'm not afraid of Dragon, Okay, go ahead, play dragon and swing at me. I'll take it happily because on 9 Don, I'm going to KO your dragon. Why? Because I'm going to spend my first 3 turns making sure I have a combination of Van Augur and Shigan or Laboon and Black Hole and Shigan. And as long as I have that, then you can go ahead and play dragon or whatever 8 costs you want to play. And on my 9 Don turn, I'm going to KO it. And then from there, it's going to be 10 costs on top of 10 costs. And as long as I have a Laboon, a Jesus established, I'm going to most of the time end up winning that game. So with that said, if you have Ice Age, on your 7 Don turn, you can establish Jesus. And then on your 9 Don turn, if you have another Jesus, you can play Ice Age, use Shigan or Black Hole, and then establish a second Jesus. So you're KOing that 8 cost that they played, and then you're also establishing a second Jesus. And I pulled that off twice in like actual play, not at Nats, but like in my testing, and it felt like so good. But again, it's very win more. So I just found myself like I'm not looking to play for weak positions, or I'm not looking to have outs in bad positions because I want to make sure I'm not getting in those bad positions. And if your deck is consistent enough and streamlined enough and you know how to play it, then you won't find yourself in those bad positions where, for example, before you would need to tap Manchury to get out a Bardo blocker. And likewise here, you know, I'm calculated in knowing, okay, I'm going to win in 2 turns, where playing this Ice Age and establishing a second Jesus is just win more. I don't need that. I know I'm going to win with the 1 Jesus that I had. I don't need to be greedy and establish a second Jesus. So like to have this card for that fringe situation is just win more and greedy and not worth it, in my opinion. Now, yes, this card is also goaded into Plouffe. But again, I think if played well, you don't need this card. And the fact that Tempest Kick pretty much does the same thing. It gets their 7 costs in range of Shigan and Black Hole. I think that this is just the better choice because it has the same trigger and it also replaces a card in hand. So if you're playing a matchup where you don't think you're going to even need the -3, you can just use it to draw a card, or you can just ditch it and forget about it, whatever it is. But it's a nice card to have. Especially because it replaces a card in your hand. Against Dofi, -3 to something, play .q or tap your .q, KO, you know, for 1 to 3 Don. It feels great. So with that said, these two, Manchury and Tempest Kick, are, in my opinion, and again, this doesn't mean that this is the only right answer. I just kind of narrowed it down in terms of like tier list, I guess, except for Sky Slicer. Sky Slicer should have went out before Jack went out, to be honest. But these are, in my opinion, if we're talking about putting in techs on Blackbeard, I think this would be the S tier picks. And everything else, you know, A, B, C, D, whatever you want to call them. But Manchury is goated. And Daniel, the Blackbeard that I lost to at Nats, he will make me remember it every day. Getting that, you know, in the mirror, just being able to cheat out an extra Jesus is too strong. So I don't think she's needed in Blackbeard lists right now. However, she feels great in being able to get an Augur or a Laboon and you know, recycle your toolkit that way, or to get back a Jesus, be greedy with the Jesus so that you can, you know, just if they swing into it, let's say your Jesus is at 7, you swing with the Jesus and now they invest in, you know, into a 9k swing into the Jesus to make sure it dies, and then next turn you play Manchury to get the Jesus back. It's a good play. You know, it's a good bait. It's a good card. I don't think she's necessary, though. However, if Blackbeard start to come up on the scene and more people are playing Blackbeard, I think more and more this card becomes more relevant because you get to cheat out a Jesus in that mirror, and that is very, very strong. However, once OP10 comes out, you know, Kuzan just strictly takes her place because he's in engine and he draws you a card and doesn't, deplete your trash, and he's broken. So you will, you know, where I'm testing 2 now, I'm putting 4 Kuzans in OP10, right? So with that said, right now what I'm testing is Tempest Kick, and Mansherry. Um, Disclaimer though, if I was playing in the Latin American Nationals a week ago, or I had a big tournament this coming weekend, I would still play this list. 100%, I would still play this list. Um, but for testing sake, to kind of prepare for a tournament that's a little bit less than 2 months out, I am testing this out. To my surprise, or I guess not so much surprise, but it's weird playing 6 2Ks, but it works because really you only need 2 2Ks in a given game. You're never really using more than two. Yeah, sometimes you will want to have three in hand late game, for example, but most of the time it's like you're okay with 2 2Ks and a 1K. You don't need the third 2K. So, because you're going to have these big boys to kind of hold off your opponent. So, and most of the time you're pretty much early game, you're ditching a 2K to keep whatever else is in your hand to see, the relevancies, whether they're going to be relevant cards to play. You're never really going to play one of these out. This has its use in fringe situations, but for the most part, you're pitching the 2Ks early to find cards that you actually want to progress your game plan. So I figured might as well just play other cards that I want. And in my testing so far, I have not missed the 7th 2K. 6 2Ks have been pleasantly enough. I dropped the Vasco shot. This hurt a little bit. I really like having ample Vasco shots in my deck because usually early on I will pitch them. Or I'll like search past them because I don't need them. But like late game, knowing that I have one more or two more in my deck that I can potentially find to stall, it feels good and it's a nice little safety net. But I think it's okay at 2. I just would like this to be at 3 if I could. But on that same note, I would rather have a 4th black hole. I know it sounds a little bit crazy. I don't think 4, there's an argument that 4 is too much, but again, I just think there's too many, hairline matchups like Dofi and Ploofy that, like, if I don't remove their first body, I'm going to be on the back foot for the rest of the game. So I just want to make sure that I see one of these. If I don't have the Dot Q and Laboon or Dot Q and Augur combo, or I don't find Shigan, I can at least search twice to find this to be able to play it to get rid of that first body. So for me, in terms of priority, between this is my age, black hole, Vasco shot, I would probably go to make a 4th black hole. If I was to take out Tempest Kick, for example, and only play the 2 Mansherries as techs, it would probably be black hole and either this is my age or Vasco shot. I can't tell you what I would pick right now. I think I just have to think about it a little bit more. I love getting this card off trigger. I love beefing my Jesus up and fueling him. So I really like this 1-cost searcher. If I don't see Lafitte on my first turn, I love opening. If I'm going second, for example, I love opening with this as my age and stage. Just automatically seeing 6 extra cards than my opponent has, and then on the next turn being able to see 3 more. I just went through a 10th of my deck, and or more, like 20% of my deck. I just went through 20% of my deck, and my opponent hasn't even, gotten a fraction of that. So it feels great to see these 2 in hand if I don't have Lafitte. But Vasco shot also is cheeky. So it just lets me be super aggressive and greedy with Jesus, which is why I like Vasco shot. But I don't know. I might have to actually test that ratio a little bit more. But for now, I'm still trying to convince myself that Tempest Kick is worthwhile. I'm not convinced yet. Mansherry she's goated in my opinion. I know she's not necessary, like I said, unless more Blackbeards come on the scene. But yeah, I feel like I'm rambling now, so I'm gonna stop. With that, I will say goodbye. My next video will probably be on theory for matchups like Dofi, Ploofy, shanks, and the mirror. And then other than that, I'm just going to start spewing out gameplay footage on the sim ranked, or if you guys want me to showcase a specific matchup, I'll queue up into public lobbies and you know, give you that. But yeah, again, hit me up, comment, subscribe, like, whatever, the whole shebang. Honestly, I don't really care. I'm not doing this for me. I'm really just doing this for the community. I'm doing this to encourage people to play Blackbeard, inform people on how Blackbeard should be piloted, and how to kind of break down the thought process so that you can come up with your own creative ways to play Blackbeard. But at least like I can kind of give you the cheat codes so that you can skip a bunch of hurdles that you would have to go through like I did by paying Enigma and going through the coaching. I mean, I don't regret it at all. But because I did that, I'm now able to do this for you guys. So I hope you appreciate it. If I just help one person, that's a win for me, and I'm happy. I'm just doing this for fun. So peace.